Everybody, welcome to another episode of the Mogo Bar Show. I'm your host, as always, Gabe Moronta, and with me, I have a very special guest joining me from Serbia, CEO and co-founder of Collabwriting, Sandra Idjoski. Sandra, welcome. Thank you for joining me. Collabwriting is a very unique platform. I had the pleasure of coming across it with your colleague, Gordana, where we supported each other on Product Hunt. And ever since then, we've been sort of collaborating, following each other, if you will. And now I finally have the pleasure, the honor of speaking with you. How are you doing, first off?
Yeah, thank you so much for the invite. It's always great to speak with a fellow maker. And, we're doing good. We're always keeping busy, always building something or always doing something. So that's kind of the typical life of a founder, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed everything that you guys have done, and I just think that it's phenomenal. It's like I've been following you guys for some time, and I'm happy to finally talk to you about so many different things. One of them, obviously, you're a female founder, female CEO based in Serbia. And I think that in itself is something to be applauded. The fact that you've raised from VCs, which traditionally aren't too friendly to female founders and aren't too friendly to non-American founders. And you've done that. So I was like, A, congratulations. B, I think everybody's going to want to know your secret. But more importantly, I want to know about your journey leading up to Collabwriting and what made you want to start Collabwriting, as well as tell us about Collabwriting.
Yeah, I mean, in short, collaborating helps people streamline their online research, makes it much more collaborative, and just much easier to access any of the insights that you've saved at one point in time in the future, which was a challenge for me. That's kind of how the whole thing started. I was a marketing manager for a startup, and at the point when I became like a CMO, a chief communications officer, however we would call it in English, I realized how little time I actually had to work with my content writer designer and how long term my plans would get. And then when they would ask me questions in the future, I would really have no idea why I saved something, what was relevant, fifth page of third ebook and seventh link on whatever. And all of those insights would be really important like 6 months in the future when something would start ranking really well, but they would just get lost. And then because we were acquired by another company, I was in a unique position where I was talking to a lot of kind of experts in the field who were now kind of on the inside of the organization. We were within the same group of companies. So I would get to hear a lot of insights on the industry that I really wanted to share with the team, but it would just be so hard to, I would put it in like a Google Docs and then try to attach links, but it wouldn't really be kind of syncing in the proper way. So I just wanted something simple and quick and easy. I create a highlight on a page, attach my insights, and share it to someone. It seemed super straightforward from my point of view that this is something that would be really helpful. And at that point, I just turned to my now co-founder, Ivan, who was the CTO and the founder of that startup. He then later became the CEO of the company and just asked, can this not be made? This just seems so straightforward that people would need it. And I can't seem to find anything that's really resonating with with that simple task that I needed to do. And he was like, yeah, maybe we could build it like within a weekend. And that turned out to be now a startup that we've been working on for more than 2 years. But that's kind of where the whole idea came from. And I think my work in marketing previously really helped, not just, with all the work that we were doing on the communication side and collaborating, but also understanding those early users that we were working with, talking to. It was much easier for us as a team that already worked together to kind of move forward. And that's always really helpful when you already know you share some of the like key values and future plans with someone. It just makes it so much simpler.
No, that's awesome. I love that you highlighted, you worked on something that was a pain point for a lot of people because, like you said, I have so many things that I've saved or sent to myself or sent
Yeah.
to somebody without any explanation and just said, save this, we'll talk about it later. And then I don't
Yeah.
remember why I wanted to talk about it. Um, so it's funny because that's the quintessential startup story where you're constantly researching so many different things. You're pulling from here, from there, and you're sending is like, let's talk about this, let's talk about this. And then you kind of sometimes forget what you're talking about. So I love that Collaborating really focused on an actual pain point and provided an extremely useful solution to it. Even for in a podcast scenario,
Yeah.
when you're like researching and discussing notes, with your producer or whomever, depending on how big your team is, it's so helpful to just have something to really discuss. I know that, you know, there's been many times where I'm like reading something, I'm like, what was this about? And I'm like just stuck. And I'm like, I know that I should know, but I'm like, damn it, I'm so mad that I don't remember. And it's like, like we're not machines, so we don't have that automated memory of push a button and, I would love to be able to prompt myself and come up with an answer, but I can't do that.
Yeah, we
Um,
kind of discovered a lot of things along the way. Like for a lot of users, it wasn't even just saving the data, in the moment, but also adding a level of traceability. Like whatever you say with color writing is saved with an attached link and a timestamp. So even if it disappears from the original source, you still have it. And that
yeah.
was also a really big thing for people who are doing some in-depth research, whether it's in academia, whether it's like in the R&D space. It can be really important for you to know that even though, okay, it's not there anymore, but I found it at some point and I found it relevant for some part of my research. And then when I share it with people, they can fully understand why I saved something, where my thoughts came from, or, in terms of like consulting companies or R&D companies, though those bits and pieces of data can be really important when communicating with clients or for making in-house decisions if we're going to pursue some type of technology or not. So you discover a lot of things when you start talking to users, but that was kind of the initial spark that I feel a lot of people resonate with. Just super hectic process.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think it's great that you had in you a co-founder that had similar shared experience, and you guys worked together toward achieving that. What was the moment like when you realized that you had a company in Collabwriting that was a potential business, not just an idea, but a potential business that you could not only monetize but promote even further outside of your circle or your network? What was that like?
It was kind of by chance. I got an invite. I applied with some other idea for like Hackathon in Berlin for female founders, and that was like before COVID, 2 years before that, with something completely random. And I didn't end up going because I had another obligation here, and I couldn't make it. But 2 years later, I get an invite again, and they're like, "Hey, we're kicking it off again. It's going to be in person." An invitation to apply with whatever you're working on. And I was thinking, like, that might not be bad. We were already thinking of starting something. We had a couple of ideas that were in our heads. For me, collaborating was already kind of in the back of my mind for about a year. And I decided to apply with collaborating because that was the easiest thing for me to explain. And it wasn't like a super in depth thought process. It was like, this is the easiest for me to explain. I can fill out this questionnaire super quickly and maybe just give it a shot. We're going to see what happens. And then I ended up getting invited to Berlin. That was the first pitch ever done with like 5 slides and a static website that had barely any information. And of course, we didn't win, but it was really good to hear feedback from people. And it really got me thinking that, this problem might not just be my problem. Like it might not just come from content marketers, but other people could find this really useful as well. And then we started kind of talking to people, exploring how big the market could be, what it could grow into. And that's when we decided, okay, this has even a bit more potential than we saw in the beginning because, I didn't know other industries deep enough to be able to say, okay, they need this or they don't. But when getting into those conversations with people, we realized, okay, this might not be as unique as we thought it was. Then we applied for some starter programs here locally. For the first almost 2 years, we were bootstraps and grant funded, so some small funding from those non-dilutive sources. And it was really great to be able to work with mentors, to work with people who weren't just from the local ecosystem that had a bit more experience than us. And that really gave us that help, that for those early steps that we really needed to take. And that was kind of the initial kickoff to everything that we're doing now.
No, I love that. But, that's also like the quintessential startup story, because I
Yeah.
think early pitches, like what you did in Berlin, your early pitches with, 5 slides and a static website
Yeah.
are usually, it's more for learning
Yeah.
experience than for actual, like you're not looking I, yeah, you always want to win, of course, everybody always wants to win, but it's more so like the experience of pitching, learning, especially when it's your first pitch. You're learning, how do I pitch? I remember my first pitch, I was like nervous, and I was just destroyed. I wanted to walk off, and everybody was basically just like, you did a good job, here's what you could do
Yeah.
better. And it was just sort of like, that's what you take from that, and you learn what to build on. So I think it's a great like first experience for you, is what it sounded like. Let's talk about the startup scene that you mentioned in Serbia, that you were able to get support from, like, look internally in Serbia. What was that like? What is the startup scene like in Serbia, and how were you able to sort of lean on that in a way to help, with collaborating?
I mean, before we were also in a startup beforehand, and we were in the science technology park, but because we weren't so kind of active in looking for investments, we weren't super active in kind of the outside community outside of the science technology park. We didn't really know what we were going to get ourselves into when we started collaborating. But it's actually been super positive. I mean, we're still in the early days. We're not super developed in terms of like funding opportunities, legal structures, all of that. Not there yet, but the community of people is actually really amazing. We had so much help, and everyone's been so open to just embracing every new company that's really taking it seriously, that wants to learn, that wants to kind of create some path for themselves. We even have a pretty unique initiative here that's called Garaja, basically means garage, but it's a community of startups that's created by a startup. They raised they're called Tenderly. They raised, I think, $60 million, so they've been really successful, and they basically have someone employed full time to just working on enhancing the community and giving back to the community. So from like legal documents, lectures, organizing trips, all sorts of things to help us bond and connect, and sometimes just giving us space to be able to sit around and talk. It's been really really helpful, and for us as first time founders, in the sense of running a startup that wanted to be VC backed. My co-founder had experience in running a different type of business. It was just so incredibly helpful. Sometimes you need a lawyer with really specialized experience working with like US and Serbian companies. You need someone who's maybe worked with a VC or worked with a marketing company that you're going to need in the future. And they just made it so easy for all of us to connect. So while we were kind of, I wouldn't say skeptical, but maybe concerned what it's going to look like, kind of joining the community. Are people going to be open or not? It really surpassed our expectations. There's that kind of underdog mentality where everyone's cheering on for each other and really happy whenever someone has any form of success. And I think that's really been a great part of the experience of building the company so far.
Yeah, it's interesting. I used to hear about how cutthroat like startups are, and it can be in certain aspect, but it's also an extremely supportive community. If you find the right community and you align yourself with the right people, there are a lot of helpful people that want to see you succeed and take pride in one of their own, like coming up from the bottom, if you will. I want to talk about your experience as a woman founder. You're a woman founder and CEO. What has that been like as you traverse the fundraising and of that aside with the VCs? Like, what's been that experience for you?
I mean, I think I come from a bit of a unique perspective because I come from a very traditional kind of country in terms of business still. So for me, it was pretty positive because it was still better than some of the local like corporation experience here. And yeah, we didn't raise money outside of Europe, so our investors are here regionally, and we actually had pretty good cooperation with them. We had pretty good experiences. Our lead fund is small, and our kind of lead investor was Diana, who founded the fund. So it was also great that we got a chance to work with actually a lot of women in all of these funds that invested in us. So I've had definitely some challenges where you feel like people are just not listening to you, or you're kind of dismissed before even kind of coming out to the pitch. But overall, it's been more positive than I expected with how the numbers look and how everything is showcased. Because if you're a female founder, you're also a female professional beforehand. A lot of the challenges are pretty similar, and a lot of the challenges you've already kind of navigated. So I always try to encourage female founders, if they or aspiring female founders, to try and see and pitch and go through all of these steps, because honestly my challenges in the traditional corporate space were bigger than the challenges here, and if you're able to overcome them there, you're probably going to be able to overcome them here with much more reward coming to you if it ends up succeeding. So for me it was pretty surprisingly good in terms of people we got to collaborate with and work with. I think we're also very fortunate with our local ecosystem. As I said, it's really a small ecosystem. We all know each other, and everyone's super, super helpful and super supportive. So even if there's 40 people in the room and only two, three are women, you still don't feel uncomfortable because all those people are still welcoming to you and are willing to listen and include you in whatever is happening. So from that standpoint, I think we were pretty fortunate in the terms of people we got to be surrounded by. And then also our round was very atypical because we won it in a competition. So we actually won over 800,000 euros of startup of funding through a competition in Romania, which was also a crazy experience because we were there for the first time. Neither me or my co-founder knew anyone in the Romanian ecosystem, and we pitched alongside 40 other companies from Central and Eastern Europe. So it was completely crazy. We had no expectations, and it was really great to see how that whole process looks like because it was super transparent and people were super open to welcoming kind of anyone, even if they didn't know you beforehand. So there's many challenging moments. There are some things that you're going to be annoyed about because you're going to feel like people want to put you in a box and you don't necessarily fit in with anything that people expect you to fit it into. And especially if you're talking to someone who's not so experienced in the space, they could be looking for a lot of the superficial, boxes that you need to fill out. But you know aside from that, I feel like it's been actually not as challenging as I would have expected it to be, and definitely not more challenging than being a woman in business generally. So that's why I feel like sometimes the way it's spoken about can be kind of discouraging for women. you know you're a lot of the challenges are going to be present either way, so you might as well, if you have the desire to go this route. I'm always happy to share what our experience was like, what are the funds that we're working with, if I can make an introduction, all of that. So it's definitely
That's
kind of a unique perspective, but it's really
yeah.
not as bad as sometimes they feel like people make it out to be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's amazing. I think that's important to know because, here in the US, there's always we whether you're on Twitter or LinkedIn or
Yeah,
whatever social channel you're on, you hear the horror stories of being a woman founder at a startup. And, I think it's important to know that everyone has a different experience.
yeah, yeah,
So I think it's important to like hear this message from yourself because a number of reasons. One, it's great to see that you have a supportive community, but I want people to see that there's also more to the startup world than what people know here in the US, in
yeah,
New York, or in San Francisco, in Silicon Valley, that you can find supportive communities based off of what your platform is, what your product is, what your
yeah,
business is, because you have a great business and it shows, not just because you won the competition that led you to the 800,000 euros, but because people are supporting you. Generally, people, they may be morally supportive, but they're not going to waste their energy on you
yeah,
if they don't feel that you have something worthwhile.
yeah,
And clearly you do with Collab Writing, and it shows because they're invested in you, maybe not financially, but with their time and energy. So I think that's super important that we show the people that there is, the positivity side, that it's not all bad for
yeah.
women. So thank you for sharing that.
I mean, I think that both sides should be recognized. I mean, there are definitely challenges and things that we can work on. And I feel a lot of the times that the steps that are taken could be more productive in terms of, I don't know, I've started working almost 10 years ago. There are already red flags that I can see when I'm talking to someone that could maybe be like structured. I'm sure I'm not the only one. We could do like case studies or things that, if you see your colleague talking in this way, maybe you should have a conversation with them. Maybe if you could have this conversation with yourself if you start noticing red flags as an investor who's talking to someone. Am I asking different questions? Am I doing this or that? And maybe like give some guidelines on how we could actually improve things. Because to me now I feel it's like we're a bit standing in place. We're talking about the numbers and we're talking about the challenges, but I don't feel like we're moving forward so much with the solutions. So if people could get the tools to actually make better decisions, I think it would be helpful. And I think both talking about both the challenges and the positives equally would also be very helpful, as I feel like whenever I'm approached by someone who wants to be a founder, some women, young women who wants to be a founder, they always ask me about those experiences. Is it really that bad? And it always kind of feels, it feels disheartening because they could possibly have a very positive community around them and be able to work on all the things that they want to, but some other things are holding them back. Some things that they feel like would be challenges that might not end up being challenges. And it doesn't feel like it's super helpful to not highlight anything positive because you as a startup have a fraction of a chance, and if you're constantly told that you have only a fraction of that fraction of a chance, and you're never hearing anything good about that experience, it can just kind of dwindle that desire for in people to actually move forward with their ideas.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I thank you for that because, yeah, there's always more than one side to everything. And it's super important for people to know that, hear that, and understand that, or try to understand that. Because a lot of days it's usually the loudest comment that gets the most attention. So
Yeah,
thank you.
I mean, we locally have things where it's like, kind of like clickbaity things that are, if it's over exaggerated, then it's gonna get clicks. Even when you have some really like good statistics, I think that, for example, like over 80% of startups had at least one woman in their leadership team, and like we're talking about Serbia, which is like a super small country in the Balkans, to have over 80%, over 80% of startups to have women in leadership is a pretty good percentage. And I think that in some of the programs, this latest program that we took part in, I think all startups that had female founders as one of the members raised money, which is also really great statistic. And we never really hear any of those positives that we have at least here kind of happening, even if we're in the early stages, even if it's not perfect. It can still be encouraging for people to look at and see, maybe we do have the potential to create a positive community for everyone, and maybe we are stepping outside from those typical image of a founder, because if you're working in a startup in a leadership position, you have a really great platform to in the future be a founder. So it can also be a really great moment to recognize, okay, we're not perfect yet, but we might be going towards something good.
Yeah, and I think it's important also to know that nobody is perfect and no situation will be
Right.
perfect. There will always be something that can be done better in every
Yeah.
situation. It's just that doesn't, that's 100% true. It's
Yeah.
like every situation, there's something that can be done better. I think, the mistake that people make is they're looking for perfect, and
Yeah.
you have to find what's perfect for you, not necessarily what's perfect for everyone.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think that's an important message, because I don't feel like I would have even 10% of the opportunities I've had with collaborating if I just didn't give it a shot. And, we had a chance to travel to US, to work with mentors from all over the world, to have users from all over the world. I'm 29 now. I had a chance of working with such quality people that I never thought I would get a chance to, coming from like a small town in Serbia. And being a founder of such startup awarded me all of those opportunities. So it kind of feels disheartening when I hear people, give up on something that could potentially be a really good shot for them, where the playing field could even be more level than in some other industries, just because there's this stigma or these kind of disheartening numbers. So to me, that's kind of why I always try to show the positive side, because I know how much of a change it made for me. So I would really love to see other founders from not just Balkans, but wherever, to have those same chances that we got, not just me, but our whole team, that we got to do with this.
No, that's awesome. I mean, thank you for sharing all this. This has been really helpful and insightful. Um, Collabwriting. Where do you hope collabwriting is in 5 years? I mean, obviously to continue to grow. That's what every founder wants. But like in terms of like market impact, in terms of usability, I know what the product is. You gave us a brief intro as to what the product is. But where do you think it can like literally be in 5 years time, like collaborating?
I mean, our biggest goal is to make knowledge as accessible as possible. So we started from online research, but our plan is to go beyond that and enable people wherever they are, whatever they're doing, to collect any bit and piece of key insight that they found, attach their own knowledge to it, and then have that stored in one centralized place. What's a plan for the future is for us also to have more dynamic knowledge sharing, not just between people, but from those huge knowledge bases as well. So what that means is basically like you're researching something for your podcast, you land on someone's LinkedIn profile, we can give you a ping telling you that there's already knowledge stored there. And this isn't something that current kind of knowledge management solutions are offering, but this could basically connect knowledge from different team members from different time periods with your current needs. So you wouldn't have to go looking for it. We could push you the knowledge when we know exactly that you need it, based on your research kind of parameters and your patterns and what you've been looking at based on the location where you land and based on your interests. And when we look at bigger organizations, that means a lot of time saved, a lot more knowledge utilized, and a lot more knowledgeable outputs because we can connect all those insights that were stored between those 5 years with someone who maybe just entered the organization 6 months ago. So that's kind of the big goal, to create a much more dynamic knowledge base that basically kind of works with you while you're doing the research or collecting knowledge, reading through it. But it's also there always like a helpful guide whenever you're looking for any bit of information or just going through your everyday work.
No, excellent, awesome. Um, if you were not the CEO and co-founder of Collabwriting, what would you want to do? Like, what would be a passion of yours that you would want to pursue?
I mean, I really loved working in marketing beforehand. I worked with startups. I worked in marketing in a startup. But aside from, if I had the money for it, I would definitely be having like not pet center. How do you call it in English? Like a rescue or something like that,
Oh, okay,
where
like an
you can just
adoption
adopt all
center
the
pet.
animals and
Yeah.
save all of them. We have two cats in our office. My parents have five. My grandmothers have God knows how many. So, if it was a passion project, that would definitely be it. But on the business side, definitely marketing. That's something that I studied. That's something that I really loved beforehand. I really like the communication side and being able to bridge like in office, in house, what we're working on and the needs of the customers and how we can, bridge that gap between us and be that leverage between what people need, what we can do. So that's kind of what I feel like I would still be doing if we didn't come across collaborating.
No, that's pretty cool, actually. I mean, that would be huge because everybody wants to like rescue animals, pets, and everybody is like, especially during the pandemic, everybody
Yeah.
was getting a rescue animal of some sort, whether cats or dogs. A few people got some exotic animals, from what I saw on the news, but it's neither here nor there. No, this has been super fun, Sandra. I really want to thank you for taking the time. I will put obviously the links to collaborating in the show notes when this podcast episode comes out. But is there anything else that you want to leave people with, whether it's just a little tidbit on leadership, entrepreneurship, startup life, or another, if you want to talk about collaborating some more, what would you like to leave people with?
I mean, I think that if you're going to be a founder, the best advice that we ever got was start from a problem that's relevant to you. And if it's relevant to you, you're going to be much more motivated to solve it. If you're thinking of running a business but you don't know what yet, try working in a startup to see if you even like it and be able to come across a problem that you can solve with your own work. And I think that when you're starting a company, be willing to take a couple of risks and be prepared for a bit of discomfort because that's definitely going to come with being a founder, but also find that community that's going to be able to support you in those moments. Those were some of the lessons that we learned. Make solving a problem that's relevant for us made it much easier. Being connected to people that can help us with this process, and then also always having that community element with whatever you're doing, whether it's launching, building, whichever part. I think that's super helpful, and it's going to help you keep that idea of the future in your head, because when you're working alone, 6 months from now can seem so far away, and like it's impossible for your companies to still be there in 6 months when you're in the early days. But having those people around you who have been through that is really, really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Sandra, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me and, talking about your journey, your vision, and everything. And thank you so much.